How is it that Adam was still alive after he ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, when God had clearly told him that the day that you eat of it, you shall surely die? For in the day that you eat from it, you shall surely die. But Adam didn't surely die. Well, I think what's going on here is that this word die and death has a metonym, and that metonym is to be cut off or to be exiled, to be kicked out of the land. And so there's this synonymous meaning between death and exile that gets played out through the Old Testament that is important for us to understand, so that when we hear death, we don't have to think uh, physical death. That when we hear death, we can also understand that exile is one of the ways in which death is played out. And so if we take a look here in Exodus chapter 31, God is talking to Moses. Moses is up on the mountain, and he's about to come down from the mountain with the golden tablets. So this is the last thing that happens before God sends Moses down to find the people in worship to the golden calf. And so God tells Moses, and Yahweh spoke to Moses and said, "And you shall speak to the Israelites, saying, Surely you must keep my Sabbaths, because it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, in order to know that I am Yahweh, who consecrates you. And you must keep the Sabbath, because it is holy for you. Defilers of it will surely be put to death." Just like Adam was told that if you eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you shall surely die. We are told that the defilers of the Sabbath shall be put to death, because anyone who does work on it, that person will be cut off from among his people. And so death and cut off, in this case here, we get this parallel synonymism that is happening in the Hebrew language to help you equate these two words, to be cut off and death, as one of the ways in which that it can be played out. So on six days, on 6 days work can be done, and on the seventh is a Sabbath of complete rest, a holy day for Yahweh. Anyone who does work on the Sabbath day will surely be put to death. The Israelites will pay attention to the Sabbath in order to fulfill the Sabbath throughout their generations as a lasting covenant. And then this is, it is a sign between me and Israelites forever. So they are told to keep the Sabbath, that it is a promise to the Israelites that God will sanctify them, that they are observing the Sabbath because they are remembering that God keeps his promise, and his promise is to give them eternal rest, that he will sanctify them. They are to keep it holy because sanctifying means the process of being made holy. They keep it holy because God will sanctify them. And so there is this link between death and being cut off from among the people. And so if we go to Leviticus chapter 19, we can read here, or in 20, Yahweh is talking to Moses, and Moses is then relaying this to the people so that they can know how to behave, how to be God's people. And then Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "And to the Israelites you shall say, if there is anyone from the Israelites or from an alien who is dwelling in Israel who gives any of his offspring to Moloch." This is child sacrifice, and this is not just child sacrifice. This is like the worst kind of child sacrifice. This is to like burn your child alive sacrifice to Moloch. If anyone who is doing this, he must surely be put to death. Do you remember how death is equated with exile? Well, to begin with, as we keep reading this here, we're going to see that it's death, 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 and then the same call for judgment, but this time it's going to be to be cut off. And so he shall be surely be put to death. The people of the land, this is in the green, must stone him with stones. And then God says, "And I myself will set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from the midst of the people, because he has given some of his offspring to Molech, so that he makes my sanctuary unclean and profanes my holy name." And so this here, you get this equating of this, that you were to stone this person, and God says, "I myself am going to cut them off." And so later we'll find out that even if this person is not stoned, God is still going to cut them off, that they are not going to be a part of the people of God. They have chosen to leave the people of God, therefore they have been exiled from the people of God. They are cut off from the people of God. Just as Adam and Eve were cut off from the garden, the people will be cut off from the people. And this is equated with death, in the red here. "And if the people of the land ever shut their eyes from that man at his giving some of his offspring to Molech by not putting him to death, then what happens here? Then I myself will set my face against that man." What does it mean to shut their eyes? They're ignoring it. Any person who ignores this atrocity that is happening, then they will be cut off. And what does it mean to be cut off? To no longer be considered part of the people of God. "And I myself will set my face against that man and his clan, and I will cut him off, and all those from the midst of their people who prostitute after Molech." And then down here, I will cut him off from the midst of the people, and you shall consecrate yourselves, and you shall be holy, because I am Yahweh your God, and you shall keep my statutes, and you shall do them. I am Yahweh who consecrates you. And so God is saying, this is what it means to be my people. You are to be a holy people. You are not to be going and following the pattern of the people that and sacrificing your children to Molech. If you do this, you are to put that person to death, which means to either physically kill them, to stone them, or to exile them from the community. Type of a thing. And God says, in fact, I am going to exile them from the community. They will be cut off. They will not be considered part of the people of God. And then he says, I am Yahweh. I will do it. When God says, I am Yahweh, he's saying, this is who I am. I'm not the type of God that accepts child sacrifice. I'm not the type of God that is going to stand by and allow this evil to go unjudged. I will do what I say I am going to do. And then let's go ahead and take a look at these. They shall be cut off, they shall be put to death. And I've highlighted these here. He shall surely be put to death. Shall surely be put to death. Shall be put to death. Their blood is on them. This is another way to talk about that. Their own death, they are responsible for their own death, because they have brought this evil on themselves by doing these atrocious things. Just like if somebody were to commit murder and and it was atrocious type of a thing, and then the judgment was the death penalty, we would say, we are not the ones that have determined that the death penalty is what needs to be done. You have brought this death penalty on yourself, that type of thing. This is your fault, and we are just trying to bring justice type of thing. He shall surely be put to death. That's in the blue. Their blood is on them. And they shall surely be put to death. Their blood is on them. Green. They shall burn him and them, so that it shall not become depravity in the midst of you. And he shall surely be put to death. Now we're in the yellow. They shall surely be put to death. Their blood is on them. The purple. And they shall be cut off before you, the eyes of their people. He must bear his guilt. And so these are the same sexual sins, depravity that is going on. And it's calling for death or to be cut off. They shall bear their own guilt. And so this isn't just like only in this instance death and stoning, and in this instance they're cut off. No, these are equated synonymously in the minds of the people. Sometimes physical death is what is going to need to be done for justice to happen, and other times to be cut off from the people, to be exiled from the land, to go into the land of death and leave the land of life, just as Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden and they had to go east, away from the life of God. In the same way here, they are cut off from the land, the place where God dwells. Both of them shall be cut off in the blue here. Both of them shall be cut off from the midst of their people. They must bear their guilt. They shall die childless. They shall be childless. And then down here in the green, and you shall keep all my statutes and all my regulations, and you shall do them, so that the land to which I am bringing you to inhabit shall not vomit you out. Just as Adam and Eve were kicked out of the land, to be exiled from the land is explained as the land vomiting you out. So you're doing all of this evil in the land. You make the land sick, and the land's natural defense then is to vomit you out, to kick you out, to exile you. So that the land to which I'm bringing to you to inhabit in the blue shall not vomit you out, and you shall not follow the statutes of the nation that I'm driving out from before you, because they did all these things, and I detest them. So they have brought this sickness onto the land, and so now the land is vomiting out the Canaanites that are before them, and Israel is coming in, and God is saying, don't do the same thing that the Canaanites have done. All of these detestable things. The burning of your children to Molech. Do not do that. For if you do that, the land will vomit you out, just as it is now vomiting out the Canaanites. So if we take a look at this commentary, it says various proposals have been made as to how the sentence of cutting off was executed. It is certain that the final goal of the sentence was the premature death of the offender. And then just double checking to make sure I don't have anything up there. Down here in the blue, these passages, if we're talking about the sacrificing the children to Molech right here before the blue, these passages show clearly that an institutional judgment convicts the offender and sentences him to death. The offender is cut off when the sentence is executed. So one way that you can read that is that when you kill them, they are cut off from the people. But if we keep reading here, if the offender is not executed, Yahweh himself will cut off the offender and his kin. The cutting off formula, therefore, does not appear to refer solely to the human execution of the death penalty. In the majority of offenses, cutting off means a cutting out, which leads to banishment or excommunication from the cultic community and the covenant people. in the case of the offenses that lead to exclusion from one's own clan and from the covenant community, as in the case of secret sins that cannot be punished institutionally. So you can be doing these sins that God says will lead to you being cut off. And if people don't know about them and you don't end up getting the death penalty, God is still going to cut you off. And sometimes that could be literal death, where he has killed you. And other times he has just cut you off from the people. So you're there, you're going through all the motions of a person in the community, but you are not actually a part of the community. And so to be put to death, in terms of a judgment, could be exile, to be cut off, to be removed from the community, to be excluded from worship, all of those types of things. And then if we take a look here, it says the ultimate end of the punishment, the premature death of the offender, is in God's hands. And so these observations show that the extermination formula as such does not denote banishment or excommunication in every instance. It should therefore not be called an excommunication formula. Neither does it simply denote the premature death of the offender suffers when the sentence is executed by human agents. On the contrary, it expresses the fact that the ultimate punishment is in God's hands. Only in certain cases has God designated human agents to carry it out. In other cases, the cultic community or the clan can cut off the offender to the extent that his offense is known from life in the presence, in God's presence through exclusion. The one so cut off is then left to God as the ultimate agent of final punishment. So just as Adam and Eve were exiled out of the garden, that fulfills God's promise that they shall surely die because they are no longer now in his presence. To be cut off from the community is death because you are no longer associated with the source of life, God. And so now you have found yourself as a dead man walking type of situation. And Paul takes this very idea and then he applies it to the Christian life. And he says this, therefore, put to death what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, uncleanliness, lustful passion, evil desire, and greediness, which is idolatry. To be cut off, there are a couple of things that specifically God calls out as things that are death penalties, or to be cut off from the people, or exilable offenses. That is idolatry, pursuing other gods, sexual deviancy, child sacrifice, abusing of the poor. So that could be, a greediness type of a situation, all of these types of things. And Paul says, therefore, put to death what is earthly in you, sexual immorality, uncleanliness, lustful passion, evil desires, and greediness, which is idolatry, because of which the wrath of God is coming upon the sons of disobedience. This is, God says, I shall surely cut them off. I will cut them off from before my face. And that's another way of saying they shall no longer be in my presence. This is what it means to be cut off. This is what it means to have the death penalty. So it could be physical death, but it could be exclusion from the community that has life in God's presence. And then down here on the bottom, verse 7, in which also you once lived when you used to live in them. We're no longer supposed to live this way. We're supposed to be the type of people that are growing to love God more and more and more, to become the type of people that are no longer greedy, that are satisfying our own desires, but instead are becoming the type of people that willingly give up our desires to be able to love other people. If we keep pursuing this idea, to be able to look at it a little bit more, to be able to flesh it out some more, if we go to Numbers chapter 15 and verse 28, and the priest will make atonement for the person who sinned unintentionally before Yahweh, to make atonement for him, and he will be forgiven. For this is both for the native and for the Israelite who dwells there. There shall be one law for anyone who commits an unintentional wrong, verse 30 here in the red, but the one who acts presumptuously. So there is a sacrifice for unintentional sins or unintentional wrongs. And then we get to verse 30. But the one who acts presumptuously from among the native or alien blasphemes against Yahweh, and that person must be cut off from the midst of the people. Because he despised the word of Yahweh and broke the command, that person shall surely be cut off and bear the guilt. So just as we talked about sexual deviancy and idolatry and greed, all of these things which are death penalties or to be cut off, intentional sin is also one of those sins that is you will be cut off. It says you will be. Who acts presumptuously. There is a sacrifice for unintentional sins. Who sinned unintentionally, unintentional wrong. There is no sacrifice prescribed here in Leviticus for intentional sins. There is no sacrifice. What is the consequence of intentional sin? That is to be cut off or to be exiled. In Israel, this is from a Hebrew commentary, in Israel, the priest had one special function: to offer sacrifice for the sins of the people. Sins disturbs the relationships that should exist between man and woman and God and puts a barrier between them. The sacrifice is meant to restore that relationship and remove that barrier. But we must note that the Jews were always quite clear that the sins for which sacrifices could atone were sins of ignorance or unintentional sins. There is no sacrifice for intentional sins. The only thing that happens for intentional sins is to be cut off from the people and for the land to vomit you out. That's the only solution for intentional sins. The deliberate sin did not find its atonement in sacrifice there in the blue. This is a conviction that emerges again and again in the sacrificial laws of the Old Testament. Again and again, they begin when anyone sins unintentionally in any of the Lord's commandments about things not to be done. Whoever acts high-handedly, down here in the purple, but whoever acts high-handedly affronts the Lord shall be utterly cut off and bear the guilt. Deuteronomy 17:12 lays it down. Anyone who presumes to disobey, that person shall die. The sin of ignorance is pardonable. The sin of presumption is not. There is no sacrifice for intentional sins. There is only a sacrifice for unintentional sins. The solution for intentional sins is exile, death, expulsion from the land, expulsion from the community of God. That is the solution for intentional sins. This is Leviticus 18. You must not make yourselves unclean in any of these things, because the nations whom I am driving out from your presence were made unclean by all of these things. So the land became uncleaned, and I have brought the punishment of its guilt upon it, and the land has vomited out its inhabitants. The only solution for intentional sins is exile, death, to be vomited from the land. But you shall keep my commandments and my regulations here in the blue, and you shall not practice any of these detestable things. Because the people of the land who were before you did all these things, so the land became unclean. Verse 28 in the red, so that the land will not vomit you out when you make it unclean, just as it vomited out the nation that was before you. Indeed, anyone who does any of these detestable things, even those persons who do so, shall be cut off from the midst of their people. Thus, you shall keep my obligation to not do any of the statutes regarding the detestable things that you did before, so that you will not make yourselves unclean by them. I am Yahweh, your God. Here we are told that if you do these detestable things, you will be cut off, and the land will vomit you out. So do not do them. Right here, in the green, in verse 27. So the land, so that the land will not vomit you out. I guess in the orange there, and be cut off from the midst of their people. To be cut off is also equated with being vomited out, being exiled. So just as we had saw at the very beginning when we were talking about in Genesis, when God told Adam that you can eat from any of the trees, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat it, for in the day that you eat it, you shall surely die. To die also means exiled, to be removed from the land, to be cut off from the community of God, to be cut off from God's presence. And that's exactly what happens here. And God said, Eve is talking to the serpent. God said, you shall not eat from it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, you shall not surely die. And when we come down here, what happened? God said, the ground shall be cursed on account of you. The land will vomit you out. And Yahweh God sent him out from the garden to be exiled from the presence of God. And he drove the man out. The only thing that we find in the Bible as the solution to intentional sin is death, exclusion, the land vomiting you out, removed from the presence of God, excluded from the people of God, to be kicked out of the land. So you probably have a brand new question. What is the solution then to intentional sins? Because you know there is one. You know there is one because you have found it in Jesus. But what was the solution to intentional sins in the Old Testament? I just answered this question for you. How was it that Adam and Eve were still alive after they had eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? And that answer was that there are metonyms with death, exile, exclusion, to be vomited, to be removed from the presence of God, to be cut off from the people of God, to be cut off from the community. Those are all ways in which you were to think about death. But now that has led to a brand new question. What is the solution in the Old Testament for intentional sins? And that'll have to be another video.